Good evening, everybody. Today I'm going to be presenting a proposed project in the city of Venice. It's an auxiliary pumping plant. I'm going to go over a brief project overview, the project timeline, summary of the CEQA process, the environmental issues, mitigation measures, and any questions that you might have. The project is going to sit on 3 vacant lots adjacent to the original pumping plant. It's going to take up roughly around 12,000 square feet. It's going to be 2 stories, about 30 feet high. It's going to consist of 3 additional below ground pumps to supplement the 5 original pumps. It's going to add an additional utility connection, transformers, and generators, as well as a 17 by 17 foot submerged diversion structure. Additionally, there's going to be a 66-inch sewer to connect the auxiliary pumping plant to the new diversion structure, as well as fencing around the facility and vegetation. For the public, we have landscaping and benches, open space, bike parking, and public viewing areas. A second site is going to be used for staging for temporary construction. It's going to consist of 2 lots, one that's in the city of Venice and one that's owned by LA County. Both are going to be available for use. So the main objectives of this project is to prevent spills during extreme weather events at the Venice pumping plant. The original plant was built in the 50s and upgraded once in the 80s. The city of Venice wanted to provide redundancy to the pumping capacity to improve system reliability and allow regular service and maintain activities during downtime at the original plant. So as you can see from the proposed project location, the proposed auxiliary site is going to be adjacent to the original plant. So I don't know if you can see my blue laser pointer, but it's the site that's looks like a perfect square. And right behind it is the staging area where the temporary construction is going to go. See the lagoon, you got Venice, and then you got Marina del Rey right next to it. That would be the LA County area. Here's the detailed site plan. Pretty fun stuff. Here's the staging area behind the original plant. There's some beautiful 3D art that I get into. More 3D. Looks pretty nice. And here's a cross section of the project. This little guy is where the 66-inch sewer is going to go. Hopefully he's not there. Leading into the diversion structure. Next we have the project timeline. To date, this project has been approved by a unanimous vote. So currently they're waiting for construction period, which is going to take roughly around 2 years. Next, I'm going to talk about the CEQA process this project had to undergo. There was a notice of preparation sent out early November 2015, which led to a public meeting early December 2015, which produced 19 comments of concern, which were addressed in the draft EIR, which also led to a public hearing that produced 8 more comments of concern. Those concerns were addressed in the final EIR and were found that the project would result in less than significant impacts after the mitigation measures were implemented, which ultimately leads to the EIR being certified and approved on August the 8th, 2017, and leads us to the city planning entitlements. Next, we have the environmental issues the EIR produced, which fall into these categories: aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology, hydrology, land use, noise, transportation, and finally energy. Of the most significant were noise and vibration and land use. The mitigation measures for noise and vibration were pretty significant. They were the most important in the EIR and produced the most mitigation measures out of any other categories listed. The mitigation measures for noise are as follows. Operation hours for equipment will be between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The use of a pile driver, grader, jackhammer will be limited to hours between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Haul trucks only access local neighborhood streets from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., which will also help mitigate haul truck traffic in the neighborhood. Also, piles will be installed and extracted using vibration and percussive free methods. Next, the construction mitigation coordinator will notify the neighborhood at least 72 hours in advance of the planned activities prior to the start of work. Residents will be informed of the construction mitigation coordinator and on-site construction supervisor contact information by posting on the phone number on the construction site. Also, a call log must be maintained and documented, and all complaints will be documented, ranging from noise, vibration, dust, traffic, anything you can think of. Also, noise barriers will be put up with a minimum height of 20 feet to help mitigate any vibrations and noise to lock that in to the construction site. As far as vibration control, implemented ground-borne vibration control measures to reduce construction generator vibration. Next, we have the mitigation measures for quiet construction equipment. The quietest equipment should be used when possible. Typically, newer equipment is generally quieter than the older equipment, especially if it's electric, not diesel or gas powered. Hydraulic powered is generally quieter than pneumatic powered as well. Next, we have the noise monitoring plan, which is going to be supervised by the Bureau of Engineering. They're going to contract out to an acoustical / noise consultant that's going to monitor the site construction throughout the 2 years. And based on the contractor's specific schedule, they're going to constantly evaluate the noise and adjust accordingly to mitigate any noise levels that they deem to be exceeding the threshold. And just like previously stated, all equipment has to be in compliance with noise regulations. These two mitigation measures, construction equipment noise compliance and proper maintenance, follow along those lines. All equipment will be monitored carefully and then maintained in good working order throughout the process. Next, we have the equipment mufflers, shrouds, and shields mitigation measure, which is going to make sure that all construction equipment is within proper noise levels and doesn't exceed original factory specifications. When possible, mufflers and air inlet silencers will be applied to all construction equipment, which goes along to the no idling measure, which is going to make sure that no equipment is idling for more than 2 minutes at a time. The next noise mitigation measures are minimum use of audible safety warnings and construction worker training. Minimum use of audible safety warnings means that all horns, whistles, alarms, and bells will be used properly and not abused. Also, all music that's playing should not be audible to the residents nearby, which leads us to construction worker training. Um, it's believed that the proper training will lead to minimal construction noise when construction workers know how to properly use the equipment. Next, we have generator and compressor placement. This is going to make sure that all generators and compressors are as far away from sensitive areas, away from public hearing. Next, we have construction equipment storage. This is going to make sure that all equipment is stored in their proper place, specifically in the designated laydown areas. This is going to eliminate noise associated with repeated transportation of equipment to and from the site. And finally, as far as noise mitigations are concerned, there's going to be a best management practice implemented where they're going to identify potential offsite shared office space that could be made available to um, people that work from home during the weekdays. So they're going to help relocate any individuals that might be bothered by the noise during the construction phase. Next, we have mitigation measures for land use, which falls under two phases, the construction phase and the normal day-to-day operations. The mitigation measures for construction phase fall back to the noise mitigations 1 and 2. And ultimately, it is said that the impacts remain significant and unavoidable. But with those mitigation measures implemented, they'll be minimized to an appropriate level. And during the operations phase, the noise mitigation number 3 will be implemented throughout the operation of the plant, as well as aesthetics 3 and geology 1, which we'll get to in the next few slides. This is basically saying that the operations and aesthetics of the plant won't affect any of the day-to-day lives of the people of Venice. Next, we have other findings of the EIR, which are less significant but still has mitigation measures incorporated. The categories are aesthetics, air quality, biological resources, cultural resources, geology and soils, and lastly, transportation and traffic during the construction phase. For the aesthetics, we have construction staging, stockpiled materials and equipment, which basically means that the Bureau of Engineering or contractor shall be providing temporary construction fencing along the construction areas of the construction site during all activities. This is mainly to reduce the visual clutter and disorder. Also, any kind of vandalism will be removed within 24 hours after notice. Next, we have nighttime construction activities, which means that any emergency construction activities that occur at night will mitigate the lighting in a way that is directed onto the site and away from sensitive land use areas. Next, we have the Aesthetics 3 final design, which is again head by the Bureau of Engineering and should ensure that all design aspects of the auxiliary pumping plant will stay in line with the rest of the community. We have air quality. We have Tier 3 construction equipment, which is in regards to the diesel-powered equipment that is greater than 50 horsepower, which is pretty much all equipment on 4 wheels. It should meet Tier 3 emission standards of the ARB. Next, we have the mitigation measures for biological resources, which starts at the special status plant surveys, which means a certified biologist is going to be conducting a survey during appropriate blooming periods prior to the start of construction activities. They're going to make sure that no existing plants are disturbed, and if they they aren't disturbed, and to make sure that any unknown plants are identified and avoidance measures will be utilized just in case. Next, we have monitoring during vegetation removal. If the certified biologist does find vegetation that needs to be removed, mitigation measures will be implemented to replace what's removed in a appropriate area. Um, and that's going to be throughout the construction phase. Logs will be implemented, and project activities will be followed carefully. Next, we have restoration of vegetation within the Grand Canal. If there are any disturbances within the footprint of the Grand Canal, measures will be taken to restore it to its original condition. Next, we have mitigation measure biology 4, covered disposal containers, which is self-explanatory. All garbage in any containers containing any type of material will be covered at all times. We have water quality monitoring during the construction phase. A qualified biologist will be monitoring the water quality throughout the canal and any runoff from the construction site to make sure all levels are within the threshold. Next, we have nesting bird survey. So during the construction phase, if there are nesting birds, measures will be taken by appropriate personnel, specifically bird biologists or avian biologists, as they're specifically called. Surveys will be conducted. Construction will be stopped, and a 500-foot buffer will be placed around the nesting site. Next, we have slit fencing at the construction limits, which means the footprint of the crew and construction area will be minimized to what is needed and no more. So they will follow the same path going in and out throughout the construction phase, not to go outside the specific footprint that's going to be outlined in the beginning stages. Next, we have the ESHA protection, which is environmentally sensitive habitat areas. If any are found, construction will stop, and if there are any disturbances or in those areas found to be habitat areas, they will be evaluated for further mitigation measures. Lastly, we have restoration of mud flaps within the Grand Canal. If the mud flaps in the canal are disturbed in any way, they will be restored to their original condition. Next, we're going to move on to mitigation measures for cultural resources, geotechnical, and hazards. Starting with cultural resources, this is simple. It comes down to the unlikely event of finding any prehistoric artifacts or um, tribal or cultural artifacts. If any materials or bones are found, then work is going to immediately stop. The area is going to be secured. Work is going to be relocated to another area until further assessed by a qualified archaeologist. Moving on to liquefaction considerations, a survey was conducted on the potential liquefaction induced by the construction of the pumping plant. It was found to be minimal, and any differences in the settlement will be mitigated by design measures. Next, we have soil and soil vapor subsurface investigation, which basically means before the construction phase, a soil vapor subsurface investigation will be conducted by a qualified environmental consultant specializing in the identification and handling of hazardous materials. Moving on to confirmation of oil well abandonment, there is currently, well, there was currently an abandoned well named McDonald 2. Um, Measures will be taken to make sure that the well was properly abandoned up to DOGGR standards, which stands for Division of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources. If abandonment measures weren't up to standard, they will be mitigated with the proper incurrence standards. Next, we have methane encroachment, which means that which leads us back to hazard 1A. If there are any methane encroachment hazards potentially that could affect the auxiliary pumping plant, then an environmental consultant will come out and recommend mitigation measures against that. And next we move on to transportation, which is our last category. We have construction worker shuttles and coordination with emergency service providers. Construction worker shuttles basically means that the construction workers will park off-site at a designated location, which is not specified yet, and will be shuttled in through by means of a 10 to 15 passenger shuttle van. And lastly, in coordination with emergency services, um, uh, all access to the roads and construction site will be consulted with emergency services, meaning police, fire, ambulances, and paramedic services will be updated on any road closures and construction hours and any changes to routes that might affect emergency services to the site and to the public. Any questions?